Long before Rome ruled the world, before legions marched with steel discipline and emperors carved their names into history, there was fear. Raw, primal fear. It came not from Carthage, not from the east, but from the north. From the shadowed lands beyond the Alps came warriors the Romans couldn't understand, tall, wild-hailed men with painted faces, howling like wolves under blood-red skies. They were the And on one summer day, July 18, 390 BCE, that fear took form on the banks of the river Allia. Rome, young and proud, sent its army to meet the invaders, confident, unprepared. What happened next wasn't a battle. It was an annihilation, a massacre. Roman soldiers fled in panic, some drowned in the Tiber, others were cut down as they ran. The Celts didn't storm the gates of Rome, they walked through them. The eternal city was theirs, abandoned by its own defenders. For days, Rome burned, temples looted, homes destroyed, senators killed in the streets. The survivors could only watch, silent, broken, from the hills. This was not just a defeat, it was a wound, a trauma that would haunt the Roman psyche for centuries. And while history would later glorify Rome's victories, this moment was deliberately buried, left to rot in the shadows. But we will not forget. Today we uncover the battle that terrified a republic and changed the fate of an empire. This is the Battle of Allia. In the late 4th century BCE, Rome was still a city on the rise. Ambitious, defiant, but deeply vulnerable. It was not yet the empire we remember. There were no marble colonnades stretching across continents, no emperors wielding divine power. Rome, at this time, was a republic clawing its way out of obscurity, surrounded by enemies and fueled by pride. Its army, though brave, was modeled after outdated Greek phalanx tactics, rigid formations, vulnerable to speed and chaos. Beyond the northern mountains, however, a different world stirred. The Celtic tribes, nomadic, tribal, and fiercely independent, were on the move. Among them were the Senones, a people hardened by endless migration, conflict, and hunger for new lands. They crossed the Alps into the fertile plains of Etruria, not as conquerors, but as settlers, seeking space to thrive. But diplomacy was not Rome's strong suit. When the Etruscan city of Clusium called for help against the approaching Celts, Rome responded not with mediation, but with arrogance. 3 Roman ambassadors were sent not to negotiate but to threaten, not to understand, but to intimidate. They broke a sacred law by fighting in a battle on foreign soil. The Senones demanded justice. Rome refused. That decision would cost them dearly. The Senones, led by a chieftain named Metus, turned their march south, not to conquer Etruria, but to punish Rome. They moved quickly. Their warriors carried long swords, oval shields, and memories of betrayal. Rome had time to prepare, but didn't. Consumed by overconfidence, the Senate mustered a force of roughly 15,000 men and dispatched them north, toward the river Allia. But they were walking into a storm. The battlefield was poorly chosen. The Romans lacked reinforcements, tactical advantage, or even a proper battle plan. They underestimated the Celtic force not just in number, but in fury. What awaited them was not a battle, it was humiliation waiting to be written in blood. The sun rose on July 18, 390 BCE, casting a golden haze over the fields near the river Allia. The Romans, confident and proud, positioned their forces with little care for terrain or tactics. There were no fortified lines, no reserves, no backup plan. Their right flank rested dangerously close to the river, while their left, composed mostly of young, untested soldiers, stood exposed. They had numbers, but not strategy. They had courage, but no unity. Then came the sound. It began as a low murmur. Drums, horns, the distant clash of metal against shield. Then, like a tidal wave, the Celtic war cry erupted from the trees. The Senones charged in a frenzy, their long hair flowing behind them, bodies painted, weapons gleaming. They did not march, they stormed. Metus, the chieftain of the Senones, knew exactly what he was doing. His warriors slammed into the Roman left flank with ferocious speed. Within minutes, it crumbled. Panic spread like wildfire. Roman soldiers broke formation. Some fled toward the Tiber, throwing down their weapons in terror. Others ran for the hills, abandoning comrades, honor, and their city behind them. It wasn't a battle, it was a rout. The river ran red with blood and fear. The Celts didn't pursue with organized precision. They hunted. The Romans had no time to regroup, no signal to retreat. Everything collapsed in chaos. When the dust settled, the Romans were gone. Not dead, all of them, but broken, shattered. And Rome? Defenseless. The road was open. The Celts walked to the city not as invaders, but as victors already drunk on triumph. There would be no second chance, no reinforcement, no miracle. Only fire, ash, and the screams of a city that had never imagined it could fall so far, so fast. The Allia was not just a river that day, it became a grave for Roman pride. Rome had fallen, though not forever. After the disaster at the Allia, the Celts, led by Metus, marched through the open gates of the Eternal City. What they found was not an army waiting in defense, but silence. The Roman elite had fled to Veii. The rest hid in the hills or barricaded themselves within the Capitoline Hill, hoping the gods would intervene. But the gods remained silent. For days the Celts roamed freely. They looted temples, burned homes, desecrated altars. Fires lit up the skyline, sacred scrolls turned to ash. It was not just a city that was sacked, it was an identity, a sense of invincibility, shattered by foreign hands. The symbol of Roman pride lay in ruins. When the Celts finally left, either bribed with gold or satisfied with destruction, they didn't just leave behind rubble, they left behind trauma. Rome would never be the same. From that moment on, the Romans feared the Gauls more than any other enemy. The date of the Battle of Allia, July 18th, became a cursed day. No legal decisions, no official acts, no weddings were held on that date for centuries. The phrase, Metus Gallicus, the fear of the Gauls, echoed through generations. But fear became fuel. Rome rebuilt, stronger, meaner, more ruthless. The walls went higher, the swords sharper, the discipline stricter. The military was reformed, the phalanx abandoned. Flexibility embraced, and deep within the Roman soul, a silent vow was made, never again. Centuries later, when Julius Caesar marched into Gaul, he did so not only as a conqueror, but as a man haunted by memory. He knew what his ancestors had suffered, and through his own brutal campaigns, he ensured that the fear Rome once felt would be returned tenfold. The Battle of Allia was more than a defeat. It was Rome's awakening, and the shadow it cast shaped the destiny of an empire. The Battle of the Allia was not a moment, it was a mirror. It reflected Rome's arrogance, its fragility, its desperation to rise from humiliation. But perhaps more than anything, it revealed a terrifying truth. Even the greatest powers can collapse, not because of strategy or siege, but because of their own complacency. The Celts did not want to burn the world, they wanted to be heard, to be respected, to earn a place in the grand story of Europe. But Rome, like so many empires, responded not with understanding, but with contempt, and that mistake cost them dearly. What happened at the Allia has echoed through the ages. It whispered through the cracks of Roman walls. It seeped into their rituals, their politics, their obsession with control. That fear, Metus Gallicus, was not just fear of the other, it was fear of the unknown, fear of chaos, fear of being forgotten. And yet, from the ashes, Rome did not fade, it adapted, it evolved, it became the conquering machine it had previously lacked the discipline to become. The Allia did not destroy Rome, it forged it. So now we ask you, What if the Celts had gone further? What if Rome had never recovered? Would the story of Europe have been written in Latin? Or something wilder, more ancient, more savage? Were the Celts barbarians, or were they misunderstood warriors who instilled fear not because they were primitive, but because they reminded Rome of its own fragility? History is never one-sided. It is shaped by the voices we often silence. What do you think? Was the Battle of Allia a tragic defeat for the Romans, or a powerful message from a misunderstood people? History is shaped by those who tell it. Now it's your turn. Share your thoughts in the comments. Were the Romans' fears justified or exaggerated by pride? If you found this story compelling, give the video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to Whispering Myths for more forgotten battles and untold legends. Ring the bell so you never miss a whisper of history again, because sometimes the truth isn't written in stone, it's buried in smoke and silence.